Well, at this particular stage, we really don't know if it's actually a satellite or another ICBM test. I think the timing is quite interesting. It didn't happen during the G7 when we had President Biden here and the other world leaders suggesting that the North Koreans weren't willing to provoke all G7 members at the same time. And it's come at the end of the G7 where it's less provocative from the North Korean standpoint, but still, I think it's likely to raise questions in Tokyo and Seoul in terms of what are they actually doing and what kinds of defense preparations does Tokyo and Seoul need to engage in to prevent either an accident or an attack if that was the case.
Would it be feasible that they have the technology for a spy satellite of some sort?
Well, what we've seen from North Korea over the past 6 or 7 years is they've refined their launching technology and the variety of missile systems they have, short, mid, and long-range systems. So it's likely they could launch a satellite. The question is this in their broader strategic interest, and is this what they've been planning? And I think the evidence suggests that they're much more interested in diversifying both the quality of their missile systems, but also the quantity of their missile systems to send messages to the United States, but also allies of the United States within the region. A missile vehicle or a rocket that can launch into space can equally be used to as an ICBM to launch a nuclear-tipped missile to the United States, which is, I think, the North Koreans' interest is creating a deterrence against regime change.
Mm-hmm. So, missile technology, would that be required to launch a satellite like this if it is what they're going to do?
Well, it's similar technology in terms of the propellants, the launch vehicles, and of course the guidance systems. What's different, I think, from the short and mid-range systems is that the long-range systems, the ICBM systems, really go into space before they come back into the atmosphere to hit their intended target. So there's a lot of overlap in terms of how they're developing the technology. And this suggests that the North Koreans really are likely to be testing an ICBM, but using the guise of a satellite launch, again, to refine their ability to attack the United States and potentially targets such as Guam or other areas where there's American bases.
And of course, they are banned from doing this, aren't they?
They're banned from doing it. But what we've seen from North Korea, and this year in particular, they've launched more missiles this year than they have in the past 3 or 4 years. And it really suggests that they're accelerating, again, the quantity and quality of their missile systems to push the United States and its allies, such as Japan and South Korea, to some kind of negotiated settlement. The logic here is that they're going to be able to launch more missiles than the anti-ballistic missile systems that exist in the system can defend against. And this gives them an edge in the negotiating tactics that they're quite experienced at in terms of leveraging this comparative advantage to get some kind of extractions out of Washington and Tokyo and Seoul.
So Japan has already come out and said it'll shoot any missile down. What is the likelihood it could enter or go into Japan's airspace and territories?
So I don't see North Korea trying to provoke the Japanese directly. They'll have a finely refined launch pathway. It'll probably go over Japanese territory in some place, but it'll probably be in that window where the Japanese legally can't shoot down the missile. The North Koreans are very sophisticated in terms of how they plan and prepare for these particular tests. And again, I think that this is not meant to provoke the Japanese, but rather to test a likely ICBM missile to send a message to Washington that it's time to get back to the negotiating table. We're here. We can cause problems. Again, it's time to get back to the table.
Yeah, indeed. And you talked too about the need for South Korea to prepare. What sort of response have we seen from them? What might they need to do?
Well, what we've seen is that South Koreans and Japan and the United States have been much more cohesive in terms of thinking about their deterrence capabilities against North Korea. They as well will use their anti-ballistic missile systems to potentially defend against the North, but also likely share intelligence on the launch of the satellite or the ICBM through the GSOMA agreement with Japan and the United States. And again, this is a positive in many ways because North Korea is pushing Seoul and Tokyo and Washington together to have a much more coherent and consolidated approach to dealing with North Korea's nuclear brinkmanship and its efforts to really leverage its missile systems to exploit other countries within the region. I expect that this kind of increased collaboration between Seoul, Tokyo, and Washington to continue.
Interesting times. We will watch with interest. Thanks so much, Stephen.
Thanks. Good to see you.